A lot of guys, it's tough to do that. It is tough to go from college to the NFL because you got to remember, coach to player relationship is a big deal. And if you talk to college kids in a certain way, okay, they're still forming. I feel like not even close to being adults yet. And you control any success that they potentially have immediately upon them stepping on there. In the NFL, whenever you speak to people, respect or whatever, it's just a little bit different. So if you're a good communicator, probably not a problem at all. But if you have a way of doing things, I'm not 100% sure if you decide not to change it at all, it'll work in the NFL unless you have the perfect group of people there. And it's not always as easy as just going out and recruiting whoever you think is going to be able to get in there because you have to actually pay people and pick people and things like that.
Well, and you know him. I mean, do you think PJ Fleck would be a good NFL head coach? Because it seems like his playbook is kind of,
whoa.
Come in, I got the fucking big suitcase full of snake oil. It runs out. I leave, go somewhere else. Guess what? The snake oil tastes pretty good.
Whoa. The reason why Ty's saying this, by the way, is because if you go to Minnesota and you ask one question, who hates Iowa? The entire place screams, we hate Iowa. Okay? So Ty maybe has a little bit of a different outlook on the Minnesota head coach at the moment. Is that any part of it?
I also don't think I'm wrong. I mean, the guy's a snake oil salesman. We all know it. They stink one year, and then all of a sudden, the boat's sinking. I mean, I don't know. If you go into an NFL locker room and you basically say, hey, you got to buy into rowing the boat or get out of town, and you got a guy who's a 7-year, NFL veteran, multi-time Pro Bowler, you think he's going to just be like, okay, yeah, I'll hop into PJ's boat. He's going to say, you know what, pal, what if I want to smack you in the mouth right now? Then what do we do? Then what happens?
I heard that almost happened with Petrino down there at the Falcons.
Oh, is that right?
I heard there was almost hey, why don't you shut the fuck up moment. They weren't allowed to speak on the they weren't allowed to speak while traveling, while eating down there. Okay, these are rules, by the way, that happen in college. Like, hey, no talking at meal, pregame meal or whatever, And it's like, hey, coach, if your asshole's tight, doesn't mean mine has to be, okay? If I want to chit-chat with the boys here over some dinner rolls, why don't you get up? It's like, what? They want people to be focused in, no talking, because they're trying to mold people's habits at that point in college. In the NFL, you got guys who've been doing something a long, long time.
Yeah.
And they've been very successful at it, by the way. That's why they're in the NFL. And sometimes it's that little bullshit that just, if they can't change it for whatever, maybe it's too much pride or something like that.
Diving at people's legs during the spike, that might.
Well, and what? Hiding behind poles and seeing if people are smiling.
Yeah, just in case. Seeing who's upset.
There's such a long list of failed college coaches in the NFL.
Great coaches, too.
Great coaches.
Saban.
And by the way, they go back to college, they're good because they know how to coach, right? Last year I called the Egg Bowl alongside Adam Amin, Molly McGrath, and Matt Hasselbeck. Down there in Mississippi. It was awesome. Okay? Ended guy, dog pee, personal foul, missed extra point, mayhem.
It's electric.
I got a chance to talk to Rich Rodriguez, though, who was my college coach for the first time, basically, since he was my college coach and he left to go to Michigan. And during the conference call the week of, everybody on our side of the call knew that, okay, this is going to be a moment here where Pat and Rich talk to each other. Yeah. Rich Rod and I had a very interesting relationship, okay? I was the punter, kicker, and kickoff guy, and I was rather good at all of them. Not great, but rather good at all of them. Jack of all trades, master in none. But boy, I had a good time while doing it. I rode the coattails of a lot of people, missed a couple kicks, made a lot. Those never get talked about. All-time leading scorer, go fuck yourself. Everybody that bashes only talks about 2 kicks. But he and I had an interesting relationship. We had a gong show at the end of training camp where, it was like a celebration. And the freshmen would have to put together skits and things. And the gong show back in the day, they tried to bring it back with Mike Myers dressed up as the thing. If you're bad, there's like a siren and a boo and get the fuck off. So a couple of the coaches had air horns in the back and their skits were playing. And it was just like a culmination of team camaraderie thing. I hosted it every year. Okay. And the way it ended was me doing a Rich Rod impression every single year. Nice. And it was a highlight of his greatest hits from the rest of the entire year of the things that he would say, because he was one of the best talkers, shit talkers of all time. And the way he could lace words together that were not supposed to go together, but make it sound incredibly mean and like right to your soul, you couldn't help but respect. He's like one of those guys, like The Rock backdooring the attitude there. When The Rock was a heel, which is a bad guy in wrestling, people loved him because he was so good at it. Like he literally said, "Shut up, bitch," to somebody that was loved. But the way he delivered it, everybody loved it so much. Rich Rodriguez was like that, but it was with your friends and your teammates and potentially you at times whenever you fucked up. So whenever you're on the receiving end of it, not great. But whenever he would say to somebody else, when we were away from practice at the house or something, we would run it back and everybody's like, that guy, like, how did he, like, you know what I mean? It was one of those things. We won a lot of games with Rich Rodriguez. He is a guy who changed college football and never gets credit for it for his offensive thing and everything like that. So whenever he ends up at Michigan, we knew it wasn't going to work at Michigan.
Yeah.
There was no way it was going to work at Michigan, just because we had been to practice with him and workouts with him and meetings with him. And we were kids that didn't have other just scholarships sitting on deck at West Virginia. Like Michigan kids all got options.
Yeah.
And whenever Rich went up there, it was like, knew that there probably wasn't the same type of grit in that locker room, or guys that are just like, well, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to go somewhere else. And that happened. And, you know, he inevitably gets fired, goes to Arizona. Some things happen. And then he off the field, some things happen and come to light, which we all learned about as it was happening as well. And then he disappeared for a little bit. And then he came back to coach and be offense coordinator at Ole Miss, right? So a lot had happened since the last time he and I talked. And Hasselbeck was very excited for me, and Adam and Molly, everybody was very excited for me to talk to him. So I talked to him, you know, and I go, Coach, how you doing? And he goes, hey, well, Pat, I was excited to talk to you. And I was like, oh, I bet, Coach, you know, I bet. I said, are you the same guy, the same coach now that you were at West Virginia? Or did you have to change, you know, from at Michigan, did you have to change? Or at Arizona, did you have to change? Or anything like that? And he gave me this answer. He goes, you know, Pat, whenever I was away from the game, I tried to become a better man, better husband, better father, better everything. And I tried to become a better coach. And, you know, I read up on some things and I decided I was going to change some things. And then as soon as I got back with the whistle, Pat, I realized I only know one way. And I laughed so hard because it was like such a genuine, real answer from him. And I think that's what happens with a lot of these college coaches. Like, hey, I am successful in this way of coaching. This is how I do it. And in the NFL, that's not always going to translate. Although I do believe an NFL locker room would, if they were winning, would enjoy the shit out of Rich Rodriguez as a head coach. You're talking just like hilarious dude. Like, absolutely. Whenever I do impressions of him, whenever I get into it, like literally anybody that's played for him just heard that, and they had the moments go back. The Ole Miss kids, whenever I went to the game last, a guy named Dusty who's been with Rich Rod for a long time, he's the video guy, great guy. Funny guy, good guy. He comes up to me and goes, these kids love whenever you do Rich Rod impressions. And then I'll meet somebody who played for him at Arizona and they're like, hey, saw your Rich Rod impression, absolutely love it. And then kids at Michigan like, hey, what you do about Rich Rod? And then obviously my boys, and I was like, you should have been at those gong shows. I'd go 7-10 minutes straight just being Rich Rod, and it was electric. But there's a guy that I don't know if it would work. It would have to be with the right team. Like with PJ, I think it would have to be with the right team. But do you know if it's the right team or not? Because if it's not the right team, the first 2-3 years are going to be terrible.
Right.
You know, and as you're going to hear a lot of shit come out, the players, he lost the locker room and all this shit. You're going to hear about it because it's just two different styles of communicating with humans, because the humans are two different stages of their lives and have been through a lot different shit. And some guys, I only know one way, I realized. It was so funny, man. Just the thought of him trying to be like, okay, now when you take your 3 steps, just kind of look it out there and just hum it out there. And the guy goes and he misses and all right. Like that. Like I was, that's such a niche group of humans that only played with Rich Rodriguez there that got that. But it's such a great reference because the PJ Fleck thing, we don't know what he's like on a day-to-day.
No.
I have no idea what he's like on a day-to-day.
Do you have any idea what Chip Kelly was like? Because Chip, I feel like, wasn't the guy that was chewing people out, but he went in, GM, coach, didn't work.
Super science guy.
Oh, okay.
So they were pissing every morning to check their hydration levels, and then their hydration levels were being told to the rest of the team on how much they care. And he came in and innovated a lot of the nutrition shit around the NFL. So some of the Chip Kelly stuff that came from Oregon to Philadelphia lingered its way around the NFL, you know, nutritionists. I think the NFLPA and the NFL agreed that they have to have a nutritionist, and as that science came, but he was the guy that really brought it into the NFL. And that's why their teams were so good early because I think they were in better shape than everybody because they were just like that Oregon team there for a while. I remember when LaShawn was playing there, they were just running play. Like it was just like boom, boom, boom. Everybody was like, is he going to be able to do what he did at Oregon in the NFL? And then you start hearing about the behind the scenes stuff where I think he's a cool dude. I'm not 100% sure, but all the science shit that the guys had to do, the peeing, I think there was a lot of things that were like, it's different. And they would do a full, like the day before the game, normally people do walkthrough. I think the Eagles ran practices, which other teams are doing now because science says actually a day before peak performance, you should actually do some explosive exercises as opposed to just walking around. There's like all these things. So Chip brought a lot of that in there, but his teams could never, it felt like late, they couldn't keep up because their bodies, I think they had been through so much.
They're so worn out by the end of it.
Yeah, like early, I think a lot of the people who are outside the NFL, we're talking about like how good the teams look and how good, this is going to be the offensive future, which it kind of has, but it's not as hurry up. I mean, there's a lot of hurry up situations, but they were going at like a mock speed at Oregon back then.
Oh, yeah.
But a lot of people in the NFL were like, let's see week 13, week 14, because it's a lot longer than a college football season. And you got a little older bodies too. So I don't know. I don't know if Chip Kelly loved his time in the NFL or hated it. I don't know, but I got a chance to talk to him a couple times. He was a cool dude to me.